In a quiet countryside, a woman pulls over her car, steps out, and without hesitation fires several shots at a distant donkey. The scene shifts abruptly to David, sitting on his couch, staring into the eyes of his dog. David, an architect, is going through a rough time. His wife has left him, and in the society he lives in, being single isn't just lonely, it's dangerous. The rules are bizarre. Anyone who remains single must find a partner within 45 days, or face a grim fate. As day one passes, David finds himself checking into a peculiar hotel, designed exclusively for singles like him, all desperate to avoid their fate. At the front desk, the receptionist explains that he has a limited time to find a partner or face transformation into an animal of his choice. The catch: a couple must share certain key traits, similar hobbies, matching quirks. Only then will they be allowed to escape this strange ritual. David contemplates his dog, who was once his brother, now transformed into an animal after failing to secure a partner. The receptionist hands him a contract, outlining the strict rules. David must wear the hotel's designated clothing, interact only with other singles, refrain from self-pleasure, and rely solely on the maids for any physical satisfaction. His time starts now. Escorted to his room by a maid, David sets his luggage down and changes into the hotel's outfit. Soon after, Olivia Davidson, the hotel manager, enters with a question that startles him. If you don't find a partner in 45 days, which animal would you like to become? David's response is surprising. A lobster, he says, explaining their long lifespan and unique nature. Olivia nods, satisfied. That night, David is handcuffed to a weight by the maid to prevent any temptation of self-satisfaction, ensuring he remains focused on finding a partner. The next day, David meets two other single men, John and Ben. They quickly form a bond. Ben stutters, while John limps from an injury he claims was caused by his mother, who had been transformed into a wolf and bit him. Among the other guests is a woman constantly battling nosebleeds, and another woman, cold and aloof, sipping her tea in silence. The strangeness of this place only deepens. That evening, the guests gather in a banquet hall. John is called to the stage to share his story, revealing the traumatic reason behind his limp. Later, a party is held, giving the singles a chance to find a partner. David dances with the nosebleed woman, but there's no spark. No connection. The following day, the hotel organizes a hunt in the nearby forest. But this isn't a hunt for animals. It's a hunt for humans. Those who fail to find a partner and try to escape the fate of transformation become fugitives, living in exile as loners. The singles are tasked with capturing these loners, armed with dart guns that temporarily paralyze their prey. Bringing back a fugitive earns them extra days in the hotel, extending their chance at survival. David fails to capture a single loner, but the cold woman impresses everyone by taking down 10 fugitives. The competition intensifies. The next morning, Ben is caught breaking one of the most sacred rules, pleasuring himself. His punishment? His hand is scorched in a toaster, a brutal reminder of the consequences in this twisted hotel. The days tick by, and David's time is running out. His future as a lobster, or something far worse, looms over him. As the group returns from the hunt, David finds himself sitting next to a woman named Stella, who is running out of time. With only 5 days left before she's transformed into an animal, Stella nervously proposes to David, pleading with him to be her partner. But David declines. He finds her uninteresting, and her desperation doesn't help. Frustrated, Stella confides that she'd rather take her own life than face the horrifying transformation. Later that day, John is in the pool with the nose-bleeding woman. I guess he wants to practice his moves as a lobster in the ocean. He contemplates proposing to her but remembers they share no similarities, a crucial requirement for pairing. In a desperate move, John deliberately injures his nose, causing it to bleed. With blood trickling down his face, he confidently proposes to her. That night, the two are declared partners and sent to a private room. John must now maintain the illusion by pretending to suffer from nosebleeds, either by hurting himself or discreetly pouring ketchup on his shirt. The next morning, tragedy strikes. Stella, having lost all hope, leaps from her room window. She lies on the ground below, bleeding to death. The cold-hearted woman Angelica watches her die without a hint of emotion, while David looks on, fixated on Angelica's stoic nature. Inspired, David decides to approach Angelica, realizing that to win her over he must pretend to be as heartless as she is. David starts mimicking her cold, detached demeanor. Angelica senses a spark of attraction but remains skeptical of his true nature. The following day, she invites David to join her in a hot jacuzzi, testing his emotional indifference. She pretends to hurt herself, dramatically leaning against the edge of the jacuzzi as if she were dead. David doesn't flinch, continuing his heartless act flawlessly. Angelica is impressed, believing David might truly be like her. They are declared a couple and move into a shared room. Yet Angelica's doubts linger. She decides to test David one final time. That night, while she reads a book in bed, David falls asleep beside her, unaware of her plans. The next morning, David wakes to a horrifying sight. His dog, his former brother, lies dead, drowned in its own blood. David keeps his composure, maintaining the act of indifference. He excuses himself to the bathroom, and as soon as he shuts the door, he breaks down, silently crying. Unexpectedly, Angelica bursts into the bathroom, catching David in the act. She realizes that his heartlessness was a facade all along. Furious and betrayed, Angelica grabs David by the neck, dragging him through the corridor toward the hotel manager, Olivia, to expose his deception. In a desperate bid to escape, David wrestles free, striking Angelica to the ground before running for his life. Angelica, enraged, stumbles upon the head maid and demands to know if she's seen David. The maid denies it, and as Angelica turns to leave, David suddenly emerges from a nearby door and shoots her with a dart gun. The maid, realizing what's happening, offers to help David. Together, they carry Angelica's unconscious body to the transformation room, where she will be turned into an animal. Before they proceed, the maid makes a final request. "Shoot me with the dart too," she pleads, "so no one will suspect I helped you." David hesitates, but then, with no other option, complies, ensuring both their survival as Angelica is led toward her grim fate. After transforming Angelica into an animal, David wastes no time. He flees the hotel, disappearing into the thick forest to join the group of fugitives, known as the Loners. Their leader, Leah, is as cold and ruthless as Angelica was, showing no emotion and imposing strict rules. Leah allows David to join, but he quickly learns the harsh code of the group. No flirting, no romantic or sexual relationships. Anyone who breaks these rules faces severe consequences. The punishment is visible right before David's eyes. Two people with their lips brutally cut as a warning for having flirted. During one of their training sessions to evade the relentless hunt by the hotel's singles, David catches the attention of a short-sighted girl from the loner group. She realizes they share the same flaw, and a silent bond forms. She feels drawn to him, but knows that revealing her emotions could put them both in danger. Instead, she keeps her distance, pretending to be just a friend to avoid suspicion. One evening, chaos erupts as the hotel management and singles launch an attack on the loner camp. Amidst the confusion, David finds himself alone, cornered by his old friend Ben, who now points a dart gun at him. David pleads with Ben, reminding him of their friendship, but Ben is desperate. With no time left to find a partner, he faces inevitable transformation into an animal and refuses to listen. Just as it seems David is doomed, the short-sighted girl appears, injuring Ben and allowing David to escape. The scene shifts, revealing a secret alliance. The head maid of the hotel is meeting with Leah. The maid, who despises the hotel's twisted rules, has been helping Leah in secret. She longs to leave her husband but is trapped by the hotel's system. Resentful, she's been providing Leah with crucial information, including the timing of the hotel's planned raids on the loners. Supplies are running low in the loner camp, and Leah decides to send a group into the city. They need to act as couples to avoid suspicion, so she selects David and the short-sighted girl to pose as a pair. Barefoot and blending in, they head into the city. During their shopping trip, David gets separated from the group and is approached by a suspicious police officer who asks for proof of his marriage. Alone and panicked, David fumbles for an answer, but just in time, the short-sighted girl swoops in, kissing him. The officer, satisfied with the appearance of a couple, backs off and leaves them alone. They return to the jungle with the supplies, both relieved and more connected than ever. A few days later, Leah gathers the loners, announcing that it's finally time to strike back at the hotel. That night, under the cover of darkness, they move in silently, attacking with precision. David makes his way to John's room, where John is having dinner with the nose-bleeding girl. Without hesitation, David reveals John's secret, how he's been faking his nosebleeds to stay paired with the girl. Shock and betrayal hang in the air as the couple is torn apart. Meanwhile, Leah has Olivia, the hotel manager, tied to a chair, her mouth gagged to prevent her from calling for help. Leah hands Olivia's husband a revolver, demanding that he shoot her to save his own life. Trembling, he pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. The gun is empty. The twisted test reveals just how far the hotel's games can go, pushing everyone to their breaking point. Leah's mission had a single goal: to force Olivia to realize that her efforts to create forced couples were futile. She wanted to make Olivia see that no one in her hotel was genuinely happy. They were only acting to save themselves. After her husband pulls the trigger, Olivia erupts in fury, screaming at him for attempting to kill her, even though the gun was empty. Meanwhile, the maid who had been dancing with the loners had fully defected, joining the loner group. As the group celebrated their freedom with music and dance, the short-sighted girl finally gathered the courage to propose to David. They shared a quiet moment listening to music together, Basking in the peace of the jungle, under the guise of gathering supplies, they snuck away, spending stolen moments together. Life in the loner camp resumed as usual until one day, the maid stumbled across the short-sighted girl's diary. Inside, she discovered her feelings for David. The maid, loyal to Leah, handed the diary over without hesitation, but instead of reacting immediately, Leah decided to bide her time and strike when it hurt the most. With a calm, cold resolve, Leah took the short-sighted girl to an eye doctor, under the pretense of helping her fix her vision. Little did the girl know, Leah had arranged for the doctor to permanently blind her. On their way back to the forest, the short-sighted girl realized what Leah had done. Overwhelmed with fury, she tried to kill her, but in the ensuing chaos, the maid was the one who lost her life. When David discovered what had happened to the girl he loved, he was heartbroken. There was no longer anything they shared, no commonality that could allow them to marry under the government's strict rules. But David didn't care. He refused to cancel his plan to escape the loner group. Instead, he devoted himself to training her to live with her remaining senses. David also began to plot Leah's downfall. He knew he couldn't let her continue her reign of terror. One night, as Leah slept soundly, David crept into her tent, gagging and tying her limbs before dragging her away. He buried her in a deep hole, leaving her at the mercy of the wild animals that roamed the forest. As she struggled in vain, David watched, knowing her fate was sealed. By morning, Leah had become dinner for a pack of wild dogs, her reign finally at an end. With Leah gone, David and the blind girl escaped to the city, blending in by wearing casual clothes. They rested in a small restaurant, discussing their next move. David was filled with sadness, knowing that under the government's rules, he couldn't marry her. Their lack of similarities was a violation of the law. The only way he could be with her was if he too became blind. David's love for the blind girl was stronger than anything he'd ever felt. He was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Quietly, he asked a waiter for a knife and excused himself to the bathroom. There, standing in front of the mirror, he steeled himself for what he was about to do. Gripping the knife, he tried to summon the courage to blind himself for the sake of love, but hesitated, his hand shaking as he hovered over his eyes. The scene builds with suspense, leaving the audience questioning whether David will follow through. The movie ends on an enigmatic note. The sound of waves crashing fills the air as the screen fades to black, leaving the fate of David and the girl shrouded in mystery. That's the end for today's story, my friends. I recommend watching the recaps on the right next to keep the binge going. Subscribe for future recaps. I upload every other day. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.